I'm innocently listening to FM there, and in between a piece of music that was exhumed by a musical archaeologist from the late 13th century, and a tall, thin, blonde lady who sang with a catch in her voice some 12th century ballads. This announcer came on and mentioned briefly that Santa Claus's zip code is 99701. So I thought you all might want to know that as a public service, we're relaying it from a very serious FM station here that Santa Claus's zip code is 99701. The lady sang in a kind of an off way. She is, the kind of ladies that sing, "There is a pansy in my garden, there is a pansy there, a pansy grows in my garden fair. Oh, there is a pansy in my garden, there is a pansy in my garden." Very touching. And the announcer says, we want to announce that Santa Claus's zip code is 99701. That was Amelia Trueblow singing for you from her famous collection of 18th century. Just thought you'd like a little Christmas music. Things are heating up. Speaking of things, keep that up there, Walt. No, don't put that away yet. Speaking of things heating up, I've been making a big collection of special little Christmas gift ideas for those of you who are really, really strapped, who are really looking hard for things to get for. It's getting to be more and more, it truly is getting to be more and more difficult. In an affluent society, it's getting to be more and more difficult to buy a gift that has any kind of meaning at all. Isn't that true, Walt? Any kind of meaning at all. What are you going to do? Everybody's got a credit card. I mean, what are you going to do, Seriously, the old days when you could buy a guy a carton of cigarettes, most guys have already got a pretty well advanced case of some fantastic disease. What are you going to do about it? And you can't give a good old drunken friend of yours a bottle of Pinch. What are you going to do? It's all there. They've all got it. You see. Well, I've been collecting all along the line here little things that since I don't do anything but fritter all day long, you folks out there, all you working and spinning and toiling types, those of you who have a little last that you go to every day. Well, I don't do anything but frit. And as I fritter my time away, I once in a while I like to do a little public service. And I've been doing that by picking up a few things here and there that might prove to be of more of an interesting and perhaps even a more deeply satisfying Christmas gift. Experience. I heard a guy today on the radio who was saying that gift giving, of course, is what we call the gift experience. He said, yes. He says, what do you give when you give Christmas? You give color. Yes, we have color to give this year. And he goes on and on about the gift giving experience, which can be almost as interesting as the receiving experience. It's a dynamic experience that all of you have had. It's an ever-spreading, moving thing. It grabs you right down there by the pancreas in a kind of dynamic way and just makes you tingle all over. Now, for those of you who want to tingle really good this year, a little Christmas music, will you, Walt, please? Quack, 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 wah, wah, wah. Quack, 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 if you could only see me now, I am dancing in an exceedingly graceful way. If it wasn't for my bad left knee, I'd even be better. Lucky I wore my shin guards. The perfect gift for those who have everything. A selection of military medals. Reproductions, absolutely authenticated, of treasured military medals, exact in every detail, will fool the most hip expert. Many, many designs available, and many orders, and many ribbons are available for those who want to give something really special this Christmas. You can choose from, among many others, you can choose the Croix de Guerre, which is a French award, the Victoria Cross, or the VC. Hey, God, and there's not an Englishman who would not be proud to get a VC for Christmas. And then, among others, you can select the Iron Cross, either first or second class, given to military heroes of the Third Reich. A perfect gift for those of you who are looking for something unusual and thrilling for this Christmas. Can't you see the lovely little scene? Charles sitting underneath the Christmas tree, ripping open his gifts, and finally this tiny one, he rips it open, says, Madge, the Iron Cross! Second class, the Iron Cross, Madge. Oh, wait till the boys down at the Bund. Wait till the boys at the Bund see this one. Oh, Marge, how can I thank you? Oh, Marge. And you bought it on our Diners Club card. By the way, the Order of Lennin First Class is also available for the other side of the picture. And for those of you bad boys out there who never quite made it, you can even order, if you want, an authentic good conduct ribbon. At long last, you can make the scene. Somehow, a good conduct ribbon and the second-class Iron Cross together would make a wonderful gift pair. A his and her pair. And then, of course, there's the Guatemalan Order of the Swan for treasonists who've been decapitated. Yes, that's right. They have that. That's for guys that tried hard and didn't make it. But I kind of think this really came out of a gift catalog. And I think that those of you who have been strapped and look, yeah, that's okay, Walter. There are other things that have to be reported about this Christmas. I think this is the first Christmas that features nylon candles that burn butane. Somehow I kind of like that one. There's a nylon candle that burns butane. And then there was another candle that was advertised, I believe, in the New York Times. And it was a candle that somehow, I don't know how, I can't quite see how they did it technically, but it's a very interesting idea. It's a candle that works on the slot machine principle. And if you come up to this candle and you put enough money in it, the candle lights briefly, and somehow it spreads Christmas cheer in the surrounding area. Yes, it says a wonderful fundraising gimmick, it says, for your Christmas party, wherever you're holding your Christmas party. Oh, slumber on, my little gypsy sweetheart. La da da da, la da da. You know, I never can sing this thing without just slumber on. Yeah, that really grabs you. There's some things that just grab you. You know, speaking of being grabbed, last night we were very angry lady, no doubt. Well, speaking, it's good enough for her. It's good enough. Once in a while, your radio should talk back to you, lady. It's good discipline. Teaches you that all is not so simple as it seems. Speaking of the simple, that's a little too early for a station break. But you know who you're tuned to. It's the only station on the dial that really gets you actively mad. All the other stations, you can take or leave. You know, you don't even know you're listening to them. They just blah, 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 blah. They go on all day long. And blah, blah, digga, digga, ding, ding, blah, 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 1138, blah, blah, digga, digga, ding, ding, 27 degree, blah, blah, blah. Not WOR. Let me tell you that WOR is the only station on the dial that has caused guys to actively throw their transistor radios right out the window, 7 stories up. You should have heard what happened the other night on the Long John show. My show, oh, boy. Well, this is your... This is the spot. Well, it's good for you once in a while. There's violence in the air. We might as well contribute our little bit. Speaking of contributions, we have the Christmas Fund here. And WOR's Christmas Fund, Children's Fund there. And if you'd like to make your contribution, the time is getting short. Box 710, Times Square Station, New York. So loosen up there. Instead of buying that second-class Iron Cross, I suggest you send a couple of bucks to the Children's Christmas Fund here. This is an interesting thought there, come to think of it. The various things that are making the scene around on the Christmas line. And I went over the other day, just for kicks, I went over to FAO Schwartz. I've been looking at the really expensive stuff, just walking around and looking at this stuff. And of course, we are now living in the days that make the Romans look like penurious pikers. I mean, the Romans were pretty sad sacks, actually. I mean, compared to what we've got going for us today. I don't know what a kid would do, believe me, who gets a $1,700 automatic, transistorized, completely self-contained, battery-driven horse. Now, you can get that. You can get that, and that horse. That's right. Yeah, not kidding. He recharges himself. You just plug him in at night, and you can get any kind of horse you want. If you want a Morgan or an Arabian, you can get $1,700 is not bad for an automatic horse. And one thing about it, he's housebroken, except where he spills battery acid. Outside of that, he's okay. Now, I don't know what a kid would do when he gets this. And you know, another thing a kid can get, and it's the first time that any car company has done this. They have built an exact 1-to-1 scale model, Ed, of a Ford convertible. It's life-size scale model of a Ford convertible, and the price is exactly the same. And you can buy it in the toy department for kids that collect models, which I kind of like. Yes, you get it through. You can buy it at your Ford dealer, and it's ask for the model division down there, and tell them you're looking for the Fairlane there, and they'll arrange it. And it comes wrapped in a gift package of payments, and it's kind of nice. Well, now you hear more of these things that are available. It's incredible. I'll tell you what. I have a feeling that one of the new problems that has slowly begun to seep through America, and it's hardly ever talked about. I wonder how many middle-class guys, Ed, are living with rich kids. You know, I'm serious. I'm talking about rich kids. And you know, I know one guy who's an ordinary middle-class type guy. He makes a couple of bucks. He's one of these guys, self-made man, you know. He had a year and a half in college, that kind of thing, and he had about 9 years in the Army. And you know, they finally let him go, and he was about 27 years old by the time his feet hit the ground after going in the Army at 17. That whole scene, you know. Well, so he's been struggling his way up life's ladder, and finally now he's arrived at a position where he, you know, what's coming in is beginning to meet what's going out barely. And he's sort of just bailing, and he's just keeping it up. Well, the thing that he's got that is this giant cross on his back is he's living with this rich kid. Now, rich kids are not necessarily kids that spend a lot of dough. I'm talking about the kid is involved in things that only rich kids of, say, about 25 or 50 years ago used to be involved in. For example, where he, as a kid, this man, was when he figured that, you know, he was really going to make it as a kid, he took tap dance lessons, you know, or lessons on the piano, that kind of thing. This kid is now taking riding lessons. You know, it's the kind of kid that takes riding lessons. He takes folk dancing lessons on Wednesday, riding lessons on Saturday. And then, of course, his model-making group meets on Monday nights, and they build models of yachts and various other things that this guy never heard of in his life. You know, the kid comes home with all kinds of talk of sloops and star class and stuff, and so he's living really with a rich kid. So what the kids do is pretty interesting. When the Saturday afternoon comes, you know, and the kids are all going into New York. And, you know, when he was a kid, when the kids would go in, they would go to the ball game. You know, they'd take him to the ball game at the zoo. Well, not this kid. They bring him into an 18th century English madrigal session at the news school. And he spends 2.5 hours there absorbing culture of one kind or another. And he comes home with several Elizabethan oaths at his fingertips. And the old man, you know, not only feels like he's a slob, but he feels like somehow he's inadequate. Not only is he inadequate, but he feels that he is a social inferior to his kid. And so now he has just taken to long, morose silences when the kid comes home, you know, smelling like one of the horse he set. and his afternoon at the Westchester Hunt Club. And, the old man is lucky when they leave him to come to the Kiwanis a couple of times a month, So, yeah, that's the truth. So his kid is at the Westchester, the Marion Horse Show. They take him on that scene. And, of course, when he plays baseball, that's a very another story about the kids that play baseball today. When guys played baseball, when my friend was a kid, they went out into the lot, vacant lot. They had the tape ball that they hit around. And one or two guys would have a big fat Louisville slugger with tape all over it, and they'd start hitting it, and a couple of guys would have gloves, and that's it. Well, I don't know whether you have seen a Little League in one of the more affluent New Jersey cities in action. They got more equipment and more coaches, believe me. They got trainers, they got doctors that follow them. They've got the whole scene. They've got more stuff than the Mets. I don't know whether you know anything about the Mets, but believe me, I'll tell you. And my friend is very worried. He keeps buying all kinds of fantastic athletic equipment, which his kid won't let him touch, because it's obvious that the old man can't play second base very good. So he says, no one is going to break my glove in wrong, Dad. And so you've got a very terrible problem going. And then of course what's really confused the old man is now the kid at the age of 13 spends all of his time quoting Paul Krasner and other dynamic adolescents, and he alternates between quoting Paul Krasner and Lenny Bruce, and so this has created an additional problem. So he's not only living with a rich kid, he's living with a rich hippie kid, which compounds the problem. I wonder how many guys, how many ordinary type guys are living with a hippie and don't know it, and they just think they're living with this nutty kid. Or their kid is in with bad company. I wonder, yeah, that's the most likely. If you stay away from that, that kind of thing. The next time you bring that nut around, that's that sort of jazz. Well, forget it, Dad. Then on the other hand, I wonder how many kids think they're living with probably the last of the dinosaurs. A little realizing that the old man was one of the guys who originated. He did the first initial experiments in pot. He's not talking, but nevertheless, he made the scene a couple of times. But then it's this thing that's precipitous change here that's come about. Most guys today, the poor sad sacks that I know who have kids around, most guys today. There is an interesting problem that has begun to really manifest itself in America. Only in the last couple of years has it become so evident that it's getting sickening. And that is that there is a thing in America that everything must be for the kids. I mean, it's just like, I know guys that have been married to rhinoceri for like 15 years, and the statement is, well, it's for the kids. What do you mean for the kids? The kids living in that snake nest for 15 years, yelling and hollering, and you can hear her goring them every 20 minutes and trampling in the mud, and your screams and the yelling, the broken windows, and it's all for the kids. Yeah, and the kid, wow, what a monster he is. Whew. Well, so this is part of our this is part of the thing. Everything is for the kids, and so I know, believe me, I know many a guy who never saw a new car in his life until he bought his kid the new MG. The sad scenes, and about 3 days later the kid comes back with the back end ripped out, and that's the end of that scene for a while. It's another toy. And I'm curious about these kids that are growing up in a world of that kind of permissiveness. And there's nothing to. Oh, incidentally, speaking of permissiveness, a lot of people confuse permissiveness with advocacy, and that's a very different problem there. And yet it's beginning to develop. But in other words, there was a day when a guy, if he heard, you see, it's like an advancing pernicious disease. If he heard that the kids were making the scene in the back seat of the Hudson, well. If he was permissive, if the scene was that way, that's it. So the real Spock reader became permissive. He says, well, I won't say anything. Well, then it took just a few notches on the micrometer to develop the advocate, who was worried when he found out that the kids were not making it in the night. So then he to outdo the permissive parents who were learning the recorder down there and were doing the folk dances on Wednesday nights at the YMHA, he went all the way and began to be an advocate under the guise of permissiveness. So he said, hey, what's the matter with you guys out there? How come look at the chicks crying? Hey, how are you? And so he went out and got his kid a pusher and started the whole scene. So... Oh yeah, I know. This is truth. I'm telling you. I know a couple of super permissive parents who really, through their own kids, are living the JD life that they never had the guts to live when they were kids, and that's true. It's just like you've heard of stage mothers? You know, a stage mother who at the age of 19, had no talent, nothing, and she always wanted to go on the stage. So she finally has this kid. And so she spends her entire life chasing this kid from one sound stage to the other, who also has no talent, but has a very loud mother. Well, that's the stage mother. That's a syndrome. Well, you don't have. I wonder whether any of you know about well, I hate to say this. What is it? And let's say it's the neo JD father. It's the father, you see, who all through his life was euchred by the rules that he lived under. You see, he thought that you joined the Boy Scouts, you learned to tie knots. Then when you were 15, you could have a date. If it was only for a half an hour in the afternoon, you'd have this date on a Saturday afternoon, accompanied by 47 other kids with dates. And then by the time he was 19, he was allowed to kiss a girl, but only under bright lights and in the presence of large numbers of other people who were also kissing girls as part of a game called Post Office. And then at the age of 19 and a half, he was in the infantry, see, for 4.5 years. He came out exactly the same as he went in, except shorter, from carrying all that stuff on the top of his head and all that. And then he came out and he went to GI school, he took the GI Bill and took stuff for a while there, and he hung around, and he couldn't quite figure it out. Then all of a sudden he found himself married in the whole scene. See, well then what happens? All of a sudden it's now 1964. It's coming up, and he looks around, and he's got this 12-year-old son, you see. And so the next thing, he's been reading all the papers, about all the stuff that the kids were doing that he missed out on, for crying out loud. He missed out on all that. So the next thing you know, he's got a kid who's making the scene for him vicariously. Just like the stage mother. Has it ever occurred to you that you can have vicarious sin through another? Ever thought about that, huh? Uh-huh. Yeah. Just an idea there, just a thought. I wonder how many JDs who come from wealthy families, that kind of JD I'm talking about, is doing it for the old man, secretly. Now, the old man could never come out and say it, really. But he's thinking how much greater it would have been when he was at Princeton if he had known that there were two sexes. See, and all he knew was that there was a library and he had to get these grades, and that's about all he knew about Princeton. Once in a while they'd yell on Saturday and go to this football game. And all of a sudden he's graduating, and now he's done, and he's working for Bache and Company now. And by the time it's too late now. And then now he's got this kid, and this kid is entering Princeton. And so he's, you follow there? Just a thought there. Well, of course, there's a lot of things about that. Last night we were discussing the commercial world, and I got to thinking a little more about that connection of the commercial world with our real life. And this connection of juvenile delinquency and sin and the guy living with the rich kid, and it's all kind of connected together. I wonder how it would be if a commercial ever came on that was really real, that really was real. Can't you see this short, sweating, fat guy? And he's looking out at you, and he's got bags under his eyes, and he's smoking like mad. Smoke is coming out of his ears. You can see he just looks pasty and rotten. He's sick, He's looking out at you, and he's got a great big schooner of beer, and he's sort of leaning forward, and you can see his TV set on in the back, and and he looks and he says, and he's short of breath, He says, I figured If you're going to go, you might as well have fun when you're going. Slug of the beer, down it goes. He lights another cigarette, looks out at you. Hold it there, gang. Well, I think it'd be kind of a nice idea. Well, speaking of commercials, though, beginning to approach kind of probably an area that I've often thought about, but has never really been discussed in commercials. Have you seen that commercial where this chick shows up in a car? Have you seen that one? Oh boy, I mean that really gets right down to the basics. Didn't you see that one? Oh no, the airport. No, it's a much better commercial. This commercial leaves the word. It really opens up new ground. It opens up new ground for the commercial world. In fact, there have been several commercials. There's one commercial today. One of these commercials, for the stuff that you put in the water that fizzes, for what they say that's even better than a doctor's prescription for the headache and for that morning after feeding, they say. Well, it's a commercial today that's beginning to suggest that the guy that's taking it is stewed. He's bagged. Yeah, have you seen that one? It shows him cleaning up the dishes. Oh, man, hey, what a party, baby. You really can cook, You really are a good cook. And he's banging the dishes around. Wow. And she says, Freddie, Fred, do you feel all right? There's another party tomorrow. Yeah, I feel good. Boy, you can sure cook, baby. Oh, wow, what I had. Oh, my, what I had. Wowie. What I had. And, of course, it's done in such a way that you can't tell whether he's just clowning or whether he's really got a snootful. So he's, and she says, here, take this. And he a big silly grin, he looks like, and he says, oh, yeah. Oh, boy. And then he's in the sack, and you see, he's quietly sound asleep. And then the next quick cut, it shows him in the morning. His eyes are bright and sparkling, and his jaw is shaven, and he's lost his jowls overnight. And he leaps up, and he says, hiya, baby, let's go. Come on, I got to get down to the office. Da, 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 da. Have you seen that commercial? Watch it carefully. There's another one I think that is even more interesting. It's one of these nighttime commercials, it's kind of a chip-off. You can't tell whether it was done by Kazan, maybe just a little touch in there of, perhaps even Ingmar Bergman. There's a little touch of Bergman in the direction of this commercial. Very arty photography. And you see the left front hood, just the corner of the hood, the left front of a car, and it's going shh, and it's going through the Lincoln Tunnel. Shh, it's coming in from Jersey. You can just tell it's going, ooh, it goes down into the Lincoln Tunnel, chum, 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 and all those little things, those little slots on the ground, chum, chum, chum. And you don't see anything, and then there's a shot up, you see the lights going, out into the darkness, and now it's in Manhattan. You could see that, and you see the car goes, makes a left turn, starts heading uptown. Shots of traffic, and then the camera slowly drops, and they've said nothing, you see. Said nothing at all about who's in this car, but boy, it is really moving. It's going like mad, see. And now it's out on the West River Drive. And the camera slowly dollies back, and you see it's this brand new car, and the lights are playing on it, and there's this girl driving this car, and her hair is flying, and she has a very tense look about her. Very nervous, tense look. She's driving this thing, just a fantastic look of intense focus in her eyes. She's going somewhere. And then, for the first time, the announcer says, destination, rendezvous. Yeah, she's on her way. Destination, rendezvous. And she has that look of a mature lady. A mature lady who has a husband and 2 kids back in Short Hills, New Jersey. 10 o'clock at night, the kids are asleep. The old man is on the road trip up to Rensselaer, New York. The babysitter's in town. Destination, rendezvous. Did you ever see that commercial? You never saw that one? It's a commercial for, yeah, I do. It's an important thing of our time. That is a commercial for one of the cars. And believe it or not, it's an automobile commercial, but what it actually seemed to be was a rendezvous commercial. It seemed to be, if you want a little excitement in your life, I mean, don't fool around with that old, my little gypsy sweetheart. And how is my little gypsy sweetheart tonight? Oh, yeah. There's a real groundbreaker in commercials. A genuine groundbreaker in commercials. I can see a lot of genuinely a lot of new ground that can be broken if you're going to go into the illicit area of human activities for commercials. Oh, yes. Really, seriously, friends. Just let your mind go for a while. And of course, I think all of that's on its way, really. I think it's coming because the ground has already been broken. In fact, speaking of that thing that's floating around in our world, the world, that there are certain there's certain ideas that we have that we feel that are part of the American problem. In fact, I'm constantly amused at hearing interviewers who are being interviewed, and they're always talking about the problem that America's attitudes and the violence in the American life, the scene of the whole. It seems as if America has discovered evil, and it's where it all is, and that all those other people out there are kind of sitting around there and they're making crossword puzzles and playing sonatas and stuff. Well, I've been picking out a few items here and there, and I'm putting this in my vast file of trivia for the way it really is these days. Do you remember the accident? These are just two little isolated incidents that I believe prove something. At least if they don't prove something, they indicate something that has to do with the general. It's not really nuttiness. There's a new kind of man that's coming into being, I believe. Wherever industrialization has become a major part of the society, I mean really industrialization. I'm not talking about little factories in New England that make shoes. I'm talking about giant, faceless economies. Wherever that happens to exist, a new kind of man is coming into existence too, to fit this. Now, the few people around who protest it or who observe it and throw up their hands and say everything's getting sick are quite missing the point that the new kind of man is a new kind of man, and sickness should be described only in context with him. That sick is only a comparative term. Here, for example, in England, do you have my English music up there? We haven't done an English thing for a long time, and I'd like you to know what's happening in England here along that line. This is all right. All set now? All right. Here we have an English thing coming up here now. Once again, the BBC in its third program brings you a salute to Englishmen everywhere, overseas, in the colonies throughout the empire. We will fight them on the hedgerows. We'll fight them on the beaches. We'll fight them with blood cuts and sweat and tears. My God, they're all being Englishmen. And tonight, the BBC in its third program views, by God, with alarm. Yes, tonight we can only ask the question, what is happening to England and the Englishmen? London Associated Press. The decline and foul of English soccer. A recent headline in the London Daily Mail said, it was a comment on hooliganism involving both players and fans that has spread like a forest fire through English soccer, a splendid and honorable game this season. 21 players have been ejected from games because of fouls in the first 3 months of the season alone. Last season, in 8 months' play, only 34 were ousted.
Fans have rioted every Saturday. Police have been forced to escort referees as angry patrons tried to get in punches. Darts, bottles, orange peels, bread and bricks have been hurled Saturday after Saturday. The climax came, as some of you might know, when Dennis Law, Scottish international, Manchester United star, and former Italian league player, was ordered out of a match against Aston Villa November 16th. The FA Football Association must issue at once a final warning that players will be suspended and grounds closed not for a week or two, but for the rest of the season, wrote J.L. Manning of the Daily Mail. After all, who wants to pay for a ringside seat at the decline and fall of English football? And I say, hear, hear! Who wants to pay for a seat at the ringside of the decline and fall of the Empire itself? There has been trouble in recent weeks in Liverpool and Everton, Halifax and Chester, and many other residential areas. The FA Disciplinary Committee is overburdened now with complaints. They are loaded up. We are at our wits' end to know what to do, commented Joe Richards, president of the English League Management Committee. All of this, and I'd like to point this out, is happening in a land where the phrase, "It's not cricket, old man," was born. We created that phrase, "It's not cricket, old man." A phrase that meant it's just not sporting. For centuries, the British have had a reputation as sportsmen, good winners, and just as good losers. I repeat, we have lost well. Now that reputation is in danger. The FA must make it clear that their grounds are places where football should be played and watched, and are not the starting point of weekly Saturday riots and uproars. Dennis Manning and Dennis Follows, the Secretary of the Football Association, said, and we quote here, "If spectators are asked to improve their behavior on the terraces, then first there must be better behavior on the pitch. There must be better behavior on the players' side first, before we can ask the spectators to stop their uproarious hooliganism. The FA, as you know, is the ruling body of English soccer, an honorable by God game. In Britain, fans can be as close as just a few feet from the playing area. As you know, it's the easiest thing in the world for fans to leap the low wall and invade the playing area with bricks and bottles, and even in some cases, their own football. Some officials have warned, and we quote, "The behavior of soccer by players and fans must be improved, or," and we can only say, here, or, "there'll be fences and moats and maces and the closing of the grounds everywhere." And so tonight, the British Broadcasting Corporation and its third programming service for Englishmen everywhere in the Empire, throughout the far-flung reaches of our great colonial stretches, where the sun never sets on good Englishmen, we can only say, here, and we will not pay for a ringside seat on the decline and fall of English sportsmanship. Stay tuned for Lady Mendel, who follows with her interesting program on the collecting of postage stamps.
So, just thought you ought to know. And then I'll tell you one more thing. Our brethren to the north, whom I've always found to be exceedingly civilized people, the Canada group, exceedingly civilized. I've always been delighted with the Canadians. I would like to give you now a little what is happening in the colonies. Just one more note here. Here, please. And now a brief look at news from the provinces. First, Canada. The great Commonwealth
It lies to the north of the United States of America. Angry TCA investigators at the scene of a disaster, an air crash, said early this morning hordes of scavengers plunged through the mud seeking mementos. Their action made it difficult for authorities to piece together what happened when the giant aircraft plunged into a field near St. Teresa last night. Did you hear about that story? Well, I'll tell you, the nuttiness. Did you read that story? I'll read it to you very briefly. And so you begin to wonder just what is happening to the world. An air crash. Do you remember when the plane crashed up in Canada? For a few hours afterwards, the immediate area looked like a circus or a picnic, much more than a major tragedy. Men, women, and children slashed through the mire, picking up anything they could lay their hands on. Clothing from the trees. The dense brush, luggage, papers, and most important, as far as the investigators were concerned, pieces of the aircraft itself. One shocked TCA official who was appalled by the happy-go-lucky attitude of what he termed the human vultures said he saw a policeman threaten to put police dogs on a man who was making off with a piece of charred debris. Now that's a polite word for something that he was taking. I hate to tell you what it was. Another official said, suppose some of the passengers were still alive. Do you think we could get an ambulance through this circus? And all the people who were caught, who were picked up, said, well, I just want to see the accident. Less than a half a mile from that woman, men were working in the mud, hoping to find survivors. Between 8 and 11:30 p.m., so many cars converged on the scene that traffic conditions were chaotic. Ambulances, fire engines, and police cars were held up for 30 minutes by the line of traffic that jammed Route 11. 5 huge supply trucks were delayed. Anyway, the whole scene was wild. By 11:30, by the time the traffic thinned out, the crowds, which included whole families, including little children, who had dashed from town and heard it on the radio, of course, and dashed in. By that time, it had become a genuine circus. Women served coffee and sandwiches. Oh, boy. Investigators at the scene said that they could not believe it. There was very little to see, actually, and the people stood around and began to say, and to show signs of disappointment. They were bored. The crash was probably too complete. They couldn't find enough to dig, and yet thousands and thousands of them dug and dug and dug through the mud, and all the while the rescuers were trying to carry on what little work they could carry on. And so, where does it end? Well, I would like to submit that we haven't seen the beginning yet. By George, we've not even begun the show, and it's about to begin the center ring. Any minute now, so buy your tickets early. Reserve your seat, because the show is about to begin, and it could very well be the greatest show that mankind has ever participated in.
This is WOR Radio.